Have you ever wondered how some companies can update their apps, like, multiple times a day? It seems like magic, right? Well, the secret is something called DevOps. And today, we're going to pull back the curtain and take you on your very first DevOps journey, right here on Azure. We're going to build and deploy an application step by step. So, let's dive in.
So first things first, what exactly is Azure DevOps? You can think of it as your team's command center for building software. It's a complete toolkit that has everything you need, all in one place, from planning the work to sharing code and, of course, shipping the final product.
But here's the thing, and this is really important. DevOps isn't just about the tools. As you can see from this quote from Vodafone, it's really about changing the culture. It's a whole new way of working that can completely transform a company. It's about moving faster, being more agile, and that's where the real magic happens.
All right, so here's our game plan. We've got 5 stops on our journey today. We'll start with what Azure DevOps is. Then, the fun part, building our first automated pipeline. After that, we'll push our app out to the cloud, learn how to keep an eye on it, and finally, we'll see what other tools can plug into this whole ecosystem.
Okay, let's kick things off by really digging into what makes up the Azure DevOps toolkit. Remember, this isn't just one single thing. It's a whole suite of services that are designed to work together perfectly, covering you from that first spark of an idea all the way to getting it into your users' hands.
Let's break down the 5 core pieces you see here. It all starts with Azure Boards. That's where you plan and track all the work. Next, your code lives in Azure Repos. Then, the real engine kicks in. Azure Pipelines automates all the building and deploying. Azure Test Plans is there to make sure everything works as it should. And finally, Azure Artifacts lets you share and reuse parts of your code. You see how they all connect? It's like a perfectly choreographed dance to bring your software to life.
All right, let's move on to what I think is the most exciting part, the automated pipeline. This is the absolute engine room of any modern software project. This is where we stop doing things manually and let automation take our code from a developer's machine to the user, like lightning fast.
I love this analogy. If your code is a car, then Azure Pipelines is its own personal superhighway. The second a developer finishes a piece of code, it gets on this highway, and it's automatically built, tested, and shipped to its final destination. You'll hear this called CI/CD, continuous integration and continuous delivery. And why does it matter? Well, it means you get feedback faster, you make fewer mistakes, and you can deliver new features to your users all the time.
And you know what's really cool? This superhighway is open to pretty much any kind of vehicle. It doesn't matter what you're building with, whether it's a Java app, a modern web app with JavaScript and Node.js, something in Python, or even if you're packaging your app up in a Docker container, Azure Pipelines can handle it. It's incredibly flexible.
Now you might be thinking, okay, this sounds powerful, but it must be super complicated to set up. But honestly, it's not. It's basically 4 steps. You connect it to your code, say in GitHub, you pick a template that matches what you're building, you tell it what steps you want it to run, like build this, test that, and that's it. You hit go, and from that point on, it's all automated. Okay, so our pipeline has built our code and run all the tests. Everything looks good. Now comes the moment of truth. We've got to deploy it. We have to decide where this application is actually going to live so that people can start using it. Let's look at our options.
Where you deploy really depends on what kind of app you've built. For example, if you have a pretty traditional Java web app, you might want to put it on a Linux virtual machine. That gives you full control over everything. But if you've built a more modern app using Docker containers, you're probably going to want the power of something like Azure Kubernetes Service, or AKS, which is amazing for scaling and managing lots of containers. And of course, those aren't your only 2 choices. Not by a long shot. You could use Azure App Service, which is great for web apps, or Azure Functions if you're doing serverless stuff. You can even deploy back to your own servers if you want to. The main takeaway here is that you have a ton of flexibility. Azure Pipelines can get your code pretty much anywhere it needs to go. So, the app is live. High fives all around, right? Well, not so fast. Our journey isn't quite over. See, this whole process is a loop. Now that real people are using our application, we need to make sure it's running smoothly. We've got to keep an eye on its health, and that's where monitoring comes in.
This is such a critical idea in DevOps. You have to shift your thinking. Pushing the deploy button isn't the finish line. In a way, it's the starting line. Your app is now out in the wild, and you absolutely need to understand how it's behaving with real users and real traffic.
Right? It's the million-dollar question. How do you actually know if things are okay? Is your Java app suddenly running slow for people in Europe? Is a new feature causing errors that you didn't catch in testing? How can you find out about these problems before your users start complaining?
And the answer to all those questions is Azure Monitor. This is the tool that gives you what's called full observability. That's a bit of a buzzword, but it just means you can see everything that's going on. It collects all sorts of data, performance metrics, error logs, you name it, and gives you a complete, real-time picture of your app's health.
All right, as we start to wrap up our journey, let's talk about the bigger picture. One of the best things about Azure DevOps is that it's not a walled garden. It's not trying to lock you in. It's designed to play nicely with all the other tools that your team might already be using.
A really massive idea in modern DevOps is this concept of infrastructure as code. What does that mean? Well, instead of manually clicking around to create servers and networks, you write code to define everything. Think about that. Your entire infrastructure becomes a file you can version, share, and most importantly, automate.
And this is where that ecosystem really shines. You can use amazing tools like Terraform, for instance, to script out your entire Linux virtual machine setup in Azure. Or you can plug in tools like Ansible or Jenkins, if that's what your team already knows. The point is, Azure DevOps is a team player and fits into your workflow, not the other way around.
You know, building that first automated pipeline, it's a huge step. It's a game changer. But I promise you, it is just the beginning. Once you see the power of automation, it'll fundamentally change how you think about building software. It opens up a whole new world of possibilities. So, as you get started, the only real question left is, what are you going to automate next?